Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Pro Trade Room Plus Jobs Report. My name is Lee Goldstein. I'm the Trading Director for 10-Minute Trades. Please remember that I am not a financial advisor. All the trades we discuss are for educational purposes, so please trade carefully this morning. Okay, good morning, everyone. A couple of reminders, just so you know, margins are up. AMP raised their margins last night, and the way that AMP does it, and most of our traders are not AMP traders, but a few of you are. AMP uses 25% of the maintenance margin, which is actually less than the way Ninja does their margin events. So just to give you an idea real quickly what it means. So instead of using day trade margins, which are cheaper, in other words, you need less money in your account to trade, AMP takes 25% of the maintenance margin, which is a much higher amount of money required in your account per contract. That's the way that it works. So if you're trading the ES, for instance, with AMP, you need 25% of ES, 10,600. So you need 2650 per contract in your account. Ninja is requiring the full maintenance amount. So it's very, very expensive to trade the ES or gold, oil. Those products require a lot of margin. So with Ninja, the maintenance margin on the ES is 11,200 per contract. And keep in mind, when you put an order on with any ATM, like our software, it's double the margin because it's an order above and below the market. It's a bracket. So bonds are more reasonable to trade. For instance, you can trade ZF, you can trade ZN. You can also trade, gold is expensive to trade, over $8,000 per contract. And then the micros are usually a tenth of that. So if gold is 8,000, micros are 800 per contract. So you do have to keep in mind that this is a high margin setup. Okay, everybody understand that whole concept? There's not a micro for bonds that we've ever used that has any liquidity that I've ever seen, Ross. ZF would be, as close as you could get, which is $5 a tick. And then, 8:30 in the morning, definitely, we're thinking that early in the morning, gold tends to be whippier than it is at, say, 10 o'clock. So, you have to keep in mind the whippy possibilities with gold on these types of reports. And liquidity of the instruments that you're trading, how many orders, are there a lot of orders available? Sometimes orders dry up before big news events. You never know what's going to happen. Those are just some of the things we think about, but a lot of times you get a great trade also. So these are the events that we look forward to trading. Let's take a look at last month's, what happened last month on the report that was traded May 5th. And sometimes the U.S. jobs report is accompanied by the Canadian jobs report. So I was watching gold on the right, trading bonds on the left, ZN. And, you know, because there was a big news offset on the ADP report, that does not have a bearing on this report. Completely different data set, has no relationship. Bonds and gold both had a pretty strong downward move. And then bonds chopped and reversed quite a bit also. But bonds do that chop and reverse behavior and then tend to follow the move they originally made. I mean, obviously they don't always do that, but they often do that. So we did have a profitable trade last month. Let's take a peek at the DMM. I do want to thank everybody that's watching us on YouTube. This is our stream of the week this week. So if you be kind enough, hit the like button. We'd love that. Okay. Let's see what we got going. The DMM. So there's the gold setup. You've got a 25 bracket, a 59 activation, and you can see gold has gigantic moves. Okay, it has big moves, big reversals, lots of chop, sometimes thin volume, okay, and margin. So make sure you have enough money in your account to trade it. You know, you look at gold in terms of winners, it's been a good solid instrument to trade. Bonds, and then the oil setup may not be working as well as it had been. Our testing is showing that oil may be losing steam for this setup. It's definitely been more challenging to trade. Bonds is a good setup, ZN, with a bracket of 7. So let's set up ZN. And our activation time is 8:29:58. A bracket of 7. Targets of 8 and 20. And targets can be a range. You know, you can use a range between 6 and 25 if you want to. You don't have to use, we say all the time, you don't have to use the exact same setup that we are using in terms of the targets. ZF, you can use a similar setup, Roz. Bonds tend to move in a similar way. This particular report, if it's a good move, you're going to get the euro to move. You're going to get the Japanese yen will move. Usually when there's a good solid move in one direction on gold and bonds, you'll see a similar move on the NQ, for instance, the ES, the euro, the yen. This is a report that moves so many different instruments. So a bracket of 7, target of 8 and 20, stop of 12. Make sure account warnings are off. And also it's a good idea to label your trade so that you know that you have the right trade set up. Apply it and okay it. And then ZB. The other thing we like to do, ZN, the other thing we like to do is test our brackets. The instrument is ZN0923. So how do you test the bracket? Just testing the bracket size by making the time 0, making sure you're on sim when you enable a trade that's on 0 time. Whoops, hold on. Got to make sure I do the right one. 0 time on ZN. And there is a better bracket size. I like to have the brackets spread apart enough so that we could do an intelligent analysis of the trade. Okay? So ZN eight and 20 targets between 6 and 25. Figure on managing the trade. Try to give bonds a little bit of patience to find their direction with a stop of 12. That's what I would recommend. A little bit of patience, which is not always easy. Trigger time is 8:29:58. And I'm also looking at ZB this morning. ZB, we used to trade ZB on this report years ago. And ZB is 31.25 a tick. It's a more expensive instrument to trade. All right, anybody got questions about the setup? If you're going to trade gold, let's go over the gold setup. I'm going to keep my news off to the side. These are all of the elements that make up the report this morning. The key news is always the non-farm payrolls. The participation rate is important, and the unemployment rate. The unemployment rate used to be a lot more important than it is now because it's very low right now. Years ago, it used to have a much bigger effect on the report. Before I put gold up, let's which market will be a winning trade? All of them, of course. All markets will be a winning trade. Let's check our time sync. By going to the website, time is, it checks my computer to see if my computer is in sync. And gold, if you're interested in trading it, gold has those big outsized moves. The setup that we have on the DMM is an activation time of 8, and I'm not trading gold, but I want to show you how to set it up. 8:29:59, a bracket of 25, and you've got targets. You know, if you think about the gold targets, right? When you have a winning trade, the moves are really outsized, huge. So what I would consider on gold, if I was trading gold live, now you have to have a significant amount of money in your account because don't forget the margin. But let's say you have, you know, $20,000 in your account, because it's 8,000 per contract on gold, and you need that times two. The first target is 15, and I would make my second target 50 and plan to manage the trade. Plan to manage the trade. Because a lot of times you have a very big move and it pulls back, so it may not always hit that target, okay? But if you get a giant outside move and you just have a 30-tick target, you're going to be upset with yourself that you didn't choose a bigger second target. So I would pick a bigger second target. The stop is 35 on gold. It's $10 a tick, okay? Gold is $10 a tick. And let's say your first target gets hit with gold. You know, it tends to be pretty whippy, gold, so you could use target one stop move. If your first target gets hit, move your stop to break even -5. And that'll protect roughly 10 ticks a target of profit. So if it reverses on you and stays reversed, you could protect that first target of profit if it hits it. So an activation of 829.59, a bracket of 25, targets ranging anywhere from 10 to 60, right? Anywhere between 10 and 60. The stop is 35, and that target one stop move, break even -5, is not a bad idea. And don't forget, you always want to label. I like to label my trades. That would be gold. Set the gold setup. I'll save the template. NFP, gold, today's date. Now, I don't want all these trades on my control panel because it gets confusing. Does anybody have any questions about the setups? Watching gold on the right, trading bonds on the left. All right, trading bonds on the left. And I'm just going to check my brackets one more time. Markets are not that volatile right now. They're a little bit on the quiet side, you could say, right? They are a little bit on the quiet side. Good sized brackets. Trigger time on bonds is 8:29:58. And make sure that if you're trading a live account, that you put your account on live. Make sure your charts are on live, right? Make sure your time is correct, 8:29:58. And one more time, looking at, I'm trading live, Caesar. I have two possible setups, ZN and ZB. ZN is a bracket of 7, and the gold open and the bond open is taking place now. The gold market opens at 820. The bond market opens at 820. So there's a lot of elements that make up the news, but you know the important ones are the non-farm payrolls, the unemployment rate. All right, non-farm payrolls, they're expecting 180. I think it's going to be bigger. I think it'll probably be a bigger offset. And checking the time sync one more time. Does everybody understand why we check the time sync? Time is, you want your computer to be in sync when we're trading a news report that's very close to a certain second, really, right? Decibel, I'm trading bonds. So we do have some questions on YouTube as well. Why don't you hit that like button, folks, on YouTube? Have quite a few people watching. Watching gold on the right. Let's take a look at what happened. Let's see if we have a year ago today. So a year ago today, right? Would have been, I think a year ago today, it traded. Let's take a look. A year ago today would be 622, right? 622. See if we've got one. How about let's go back to 2020. Here's a job. Look at the way our charts looked in the middle of the pandemic. That's the way our charts looked in the middle of the pandemic. And that was June of 2020. Looks like we were trading gold on the left, looking at bonds on the right. Let's see what was going on that morning. So, June 5th. There is a feature in our software that lets you create zones. That's what those zones are. That's the correct clock for that June date. We're still going to put our orders on the chart, and you could see it shoots down with gold, and it hits both targets. So in 2020, you could see that bonds had a nice move and gold had a nice move. So who is trading what? Why don't you type in what you're trading. What are you trading? What instrument? What are you all trading? Raz on ZF, Doc likes gold, Denny on ZN, Frank on ZN and MGC. You can trade micro gold, and micro gold could be whippy. It's certainly something that happens with micro gold. Andrew on ZN. Okay, so a lot of people trading, and this is our last event of the week. John, you can't connect. Um, if ever I have a problem where I can't connect, I always reboot my cable modem as well as all my hardware. I definitely reboot my cable modem. I unplug it. When I say I reboot it, I mean that I unplug it. Evo on ZN. Okay. So, folks, keep in mind, of course, this is a high risk event. The brokers consider it a high margin event. Just a heads up, this is a risky trade. Okay. It's always been a risky trade. The market pays such tight attention to this trade. Very, very, very close attention. All right, so we've got about 3 minutes. So again, I'm thinking that we're going to see a lot more jobs created than they expect. That's what I think. All right, 2.5 minutes to go. And once again, the news they're looking at, the average hourly earnings are important, the non-farm payrolls, the unemployment rate, participation rate. All of those elements are very important. And I guess this is an important number. Obviously the Fed makes a lot of decisions based on what happens with this particular number. There's definitely a little bit of confusion about what the Fed's going to do in their next meeting. Will they take a pause? Will they keep raising? All right, we got a minute to go in 5 seconds. Our orders will show up a couple of seconds before the news. All right, 30 seconds. And there's the brackets. Okay, we did not get a good push on bonds. I had a very big ZB risk on, extra risk. It looked to me like it was going to reverse and hit my stop. I just took a quick profit, did not get anywhere near the move that I wanted to see on this report. Gold actually had a pretty good, solid move. Gold had a solid move. Eric was in the background there trading gold. I didn't even know Eric was there. I made a tiny profit on bonds. I definitely did the right thing by getting out. It looked like bonds were going to reverse. So unfortunately, bonds didn't work. Bonds just did not work well. Let's take a look and see ZN, see what happened here. Now, ZB and ZN are different. They trade differently. The reason I traded ZB is I really wanted a higher, was willing to take a higher risk for a bigger profit if the trade would have worked. ZF, gold was the instrument today. And interestingly, gold was the instrument on ISM yesterday. Even though gold can be difficult and whippy and poor liquidity, when it works well, it gives a great profit because it moves very far. It moves very far. So it's frustrating that bonds have struggled this week. ZN 0923. And I think really, Chantal, I think if you look at bonds, we're going to see too much slippage on bonds this morning. Chantal, if you can check for me and see if I'm right. I don't know if you can or not. I'd appreciate it. Did anybody trade NQ, ES, any of the indexes? NQ0923, this is NQ06. Now it's a difficult candle. That looks like a low liquidity reversal candle to me. MNQ worked, Calvin. You used a 40 tick bracket. Okay, that's good to know. That's good to know. Let me look at the MNQ candle. Also, it looks like you know, a very the candle's all wick. The candle is all wick. And I know that a couple of you have had bad luck on bonds. I know that a couple of you had bad luck on bonds. Eva, you've been struggling with bonds. Definitely struggling with bonds. If bonds don't have a solid move, then they tend to do a very bad chop. I mean, that's what happens with bonds. When they don't have a solid move, they can chop. Now, the NQ, people are reporting that the NQ was ugly. It was ugly, but it worked. We have not been trading indexes on this report in a while. There have been quite a few reports in the past where indexes froze and were extremely difficult to trade. But, you know, obviously it doesn't mean you're not going to get some good index trades also. Gold looks like it was one of the better choices today. Because again, when gold works and moves in one direction, it has a very big move. Now, let's look at what happened with the news and why it was a little bit more difficult as a report. So let me. It looks to me like there was a lot of news all over the place. So here's what we sometimes see. When we trade these types of events. The non-farm payrolls were an outsized offset. In other words, they were expecting 180,000 and they didn't get 180,000. They got almost double that. If it would have been 210,000, it might have been a better move. Sometimes we see when the offset is so big, it's not good for the instruments that we're trading. They tend to chop. And there's also the issue of whether or not all those jobs being created is good or bad news. In the old days, that would have been absolutely considered good news. It's not necessarily considered good news right now because it's trouble for the Fed, that the job market is still out of control. So that sometimes spells trouble for the Fed. Chantal, I want to thank everybody on YouTube for watching us. This was our stream of the week. We're going to shut down our YouTube stream now. Thank you very much for watching, everybody on YouTube. Hit that notification bell so you know the next time we'll be streaming on YouTube.